Chapter 1. I thought I knew everything. My name is Mark Harris, and I'm 35 years old. I live in Chicago, Illinois, in a quiet apartment downtown. From the outside, my life looks perfectly successful and stable. I wear expensive suits, drink overpriced coffee, and drive a nice car. I work as a financial advisor in a big investment company. People respect me. They smile when I walk into the room. But honestly, deep inside, I feel like something is missing. No one truly knows me, and I don't really know myself either. I go home every night to an empty apartment and silence. There are no hugs, no voices, no laughter, not even a dog. Money fills my pockets, but it doesn't fill the loneliness inside me. Success brought me everything except what I needed the most: connection. That night was colder than usual in December. Wind blew through the streets like sharp, invisible knives. I had just finished a long meeting with a difficult client. Tired and drained, I decided to walk home instead of calling a cab. I passed by Fifth Avenue, a place I usually avoided at night. That's when I saw a young boy sitting near a dark alley. He was huddled on a flattened cardboard box beside a trash bin. His clothes were thin, dirty, and not enough for the winter. He had no socks, only torn shoes with holes in them. His face was pale, and his lips were turning purple from cold. He held a small cardboard sign in his frozen hands. It said, "I'm cold. I'm hungry. Please help me." People walked past him like he was invisible or not real. Some looked for a second and then looked away quickly. No one stopped, no one said a word, and no one cared. I was about to walk away too, just like always before. But then his eyes looked up and locked onto mine. And in that second, something inside me completely changed. It was like he reached into my chest and touched my soul. I couldn't keep walking. I just couldn't. I slowly walked up to him and bent down beside him. He didn't say anything. He just stared at the ground. His hands were shaking and his knees were pressed together. "Hey, buddy, are you okay?" "What's your name?" I asked. He hesitated for a moment and then whispered, "Tyler. I'm 11. His voice was soft, like he didn't expect anyone to listen. I pulled a small chocolate bar from my coat pocket and gave it to him. He took it carefully, like it was made of gold or magic. When he smiled at me, just a small, tired smile, I felt a kind of warmth that I hadn't felt in years. Not from the chocolate, not from the weather, from being human, from being seen. I couldn't leave him there. My heart wouldn't let me. So I sat down next to him, in my fancy coat and leather shoes, on the cold concrete, beside a homeless boy named Tyler. And in that moment, something inside me began to wake up. Something I had buried under meetings, money, and pride. That was the moment my life truly began to change, because of a little boy with nothing except a smile that saved me. Chapter 2. The Boy Who Changed My Night. Tyler looked tired, but he tried not to show it. He was sitting still, holding the chocolate in his hands. He didn't eat it right away. He just looked at it, like he was making sure it was really meant for him. I could tell this kid hadn't felt safe in a long time. There was something quiet in his eyes. Too quiet. A kind of silence that comes only after a lot of pain. I sat beside him, not saying anything for a while. The street behind us was loud, full of busy people. Cars kept moving, life kept moving, but we didn't. He finally took a bite and smiled just a little bit. "Thank you," he whispered, barely looking at me. His voice was soft, like he was afraid to speak too loud. I nodded and gave him a gentle smile in return. "When did you last eat something warm?" I asked. He took another small bite and shrugged quietly. "Maybe yesterday, or maybe the day before." My chest tightened when I heard those words. I felt ashamed of the expensive dinner I had wasted. I had no idea how hard life was for some kids. I thought I knew everything. I knew nothing at all. "Where's your mom, Tyler?" I asked gently. He didn't answer for a long moment. Just silence. Then he said, with a small voice full of cracks, "She went to the hospital and never came back." I could feel a deep lump forming in my throat. I looked at him, but he didn't look back at me. He was staring down at his shoes, almost frozen still. "You don't have any other family?" I asked softly. He shook his head. "No one. Just me." I could feel his loneliness like it was my own, and maybe for the first time it truly was. "Would you like to come get something warm?" His eyes lifted, just a little. He looked at me like he didn't fully trust it, but there was a tiny light in his face. Hope. "Can I? Like a real dinner?" he asked. "Yes, Tyler, a real dinner. Let's go." We stood up together and walked down the street. The city lights shone above us, cold but beautiful. I didn't know where this moment would take me, but I knew I wasn't going to let him go hungry again. Chapter 3. A table for two. We walked into a small diner near the corner. The windows were foggy, and the lights were warm. It wasn't fancy, but it felt safe and quiet. Tyler looked around like he hadn't been inside before. He kept his hands close like he didn't belong here. I led him to a booth and sat across from him. The waitress smiled at us, but also looked curious. A man in a suit and a homeless boy, an odd pair. "What can I get you two tonight?" she asked. I looked at Tyler and nodded toward the menu. His hand shook as he picked it up slowly. "Can I have pancakes?" he asked softly. "Of course you can," I said with a smile. He smiled back, shy, but for the first time, lighter. The waitress brought pancakes, eggs, and hot cocoa. Tyler stared at the food like it was made of dreams. Then he picked up the fork and started to eat fast. He stopped suddenly and looked at me, embarrassed. "Sorry, I didn't mean to be rude," he said. "You're not rude," I replied. "You're hungry." He nodded, and I saw a tear fall from his eye. Not because the food was hot, but because it was kind. No one had been kind to him in a long time. I watched him eat and realized something very strange. For the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about work. I wasn't checking emails or worrying about deadlines. I was just here, in this moment, with this kid, and it felt more real than anything in my life before. "What do you want to be when you grow up?" I asked, curious, gently sipping my own coffee. He looked up, a little surprised by the question. "I don't know," he said. "I just want a bed." My heart broke right there in that tiny booth. "No big dreams?" I asked, trying to smile softly. "Dreams don't work when you sleep outside," he said. That line hit me harder than anything I'd ever heard. He wasn't asking for riches or fame or fun. He just wanted warmth, safety, a place to rest. And that's when I knew. I couldn't walk away. I couldn't drop him back on that street corner. Because sometimes when you find someone broken, you realize they're also helping fix something in you. Chapter 4. A promise to keep the diner was quiet now. Only a few customers remained. Tyler had finished his food and was sitting back in the booth. He looked relaxed for the first time in a long while. He wasn't hunched over, wasn't hiding his face. He looked like a regular kid, a kid who deserved better. I couldn't shake the feeling that I needed to do more. I needed to give him more than just a warm meal. I needed to give him something that would last. I didn't know what that something was yet, but I would find it. "Tyler," I said softly, breaking the silence. He looked up at me, his eyes full of curiosity. "Do you want to go somewhere safe? Somewhere you can sleep without worrying?" His eyes widened, and his hands gripped the edge of the table. He opened his mouth to speak, but stopped himself. I could see the hope rising in his chest, but also the fear. He was scared to believe it, scared it might not be real. I reached across the table and gently touched his hand. "It's okay," I said. "I'll help you. I promise." He nodded slowly, still unsure, but willing to trust. We left the diner, and the cold wind hit us again. But this time, I wasn't taking him back to the street. I was taking him to my apartment, a place where he could rest, a place where he could be safe for the first time in years. I called a taxi, and Tyler climbed in beside me. I could feel him looking at me, studying me like I was an answer to his prayers. But I wasn't. I was just a person trying to do the right thing. The ride was silent, but it was filled with something important: hope. When we reached my apartment, Tyler didn't move. He stared at the building, unsure if he could trust it. "Are you sure it's okay?" he asked. I smiled and opened the door. "Come on, let's go inside." I led him upstairs to the guest room. I told him to make himself comfortable and that he was safe here. The room was small but clean, with a warm bed and fresh sheets. I didn't want to just give him a bed. I wanted to give him a future. Before I left, I looked at Tyler one last time. He was sitting on the edge of the bed, still in his dirty clothes. But there was a small light in his eyes that hadn't been there before. "Thank you," he whispered. I nodded, my throat tight. "Get some sleep, kid. Tomorrow will be better." As I closed the door behind me, I knew I had made a promise to give Tyler a chance at something better, and maybe, just maybe, in helping him, I'd find my way too. Chapter 5. The First Step. Forward. The next morning, I woke up early. The sun was still low and the house was quiet. I had barely slept, thinking about everything. Tyler's face kept coming to my mind. The sadness in his eyes, the hunger in his heart. I couldn't get the image of him out of my head. I had promised to help him, but where to begin? How do you help a boy who has lost so much? I didn't know, but I was going to find out. I heard a sound from the guest room. Tyler was awake. I could tell by the quiet footsteps. He was probably feeling just as uncertain as I was. I took a deep breath and went to the kitchen to make coffee. I needed to think. I needed to figure out how to move forward. But then I heard a soft knock at the door. "Come in," I said. Tyler walked in slowly, still in his clothes from yesterday. His hair was messy and his eyes were a little red, but there was something different about him today. He wasn't hiding. He wasn't ashamed. There was a little bit of hope in his eyes. It wasn't much, but it was something. "Good morning," I said, smiling at him. He nodded and gave a small smile back. Can I get some clothes? Something to wear?" His voice was hesitant, but there was a spark of trust. I walked over to the closet and grabbed some old clothes. They weren't brand new, but they were clean. I handed them to him, and he took them with a quiet, "Thank you." "You're welcome," I said, watching him carefully. I wasn't sure how to talk to him, but I knew I couldn't just leave him alone. He needed someone to talk to, someone who cared. So I sat down at the table and motioned for him to join me. "Tyler," I said gently, "what do you want to do today?" He looked at me for a moment, like he wasn't sure. Then, slowly, he answered, "I don't know. I want to be okay." His words hit me hard. He wasn't asking for much. He was just asking to be okay. I could feel his vulnerability in those words. It made me realize how deeply he had been hurt, and how much more he needed than just a safe bed. He needed someone to believe in him. He needed someone to tell him he could be more than just a survivor. "You will be okay, Tyler," I said firmly, standing up. I walked over to him and placed a hand on his shoulder. "But we need to take it one step at a time." He nodded slowly, like he understood. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but it would be worth it. Tyler wasn't alone anymore, and neither was I. Chapter 6. A Step Toward Healing. The days that followed felt like a slow, steady climb. Tyler woke up every morning, but there was still hesitation in his eyes. He didn't trust easily, and I couldn't blame him. Years on the street had taught him to be careful, to protect himself. But every day, little by little, I saw him start to soften. He started talking more, sharing small pieces of his life. The silence between us wasn't as heavy anymore. I tried to be patient, to listen more than I spoke. I wanted him to know that it was okay to be vulnerable here, that it was okay to ask for help. One morning I found Tyler sitting on the couch, staring at the TV. The volume was low, and his eyes were distant. He didn't seem to be watching the show, just lost in his thoughts. I could tell something was bothering him. I sat down beside him, careful not to push too hard. "What's going on in your mind, Tyler?" He didn't answer right away. He just stared at the screen, his hands clenched tightly in his lap. After a long pause, he finally spoke, his voice barely a whisper. "I don't know how to be normal anymore." His words caught me off guard. It was like he didn't believe he could fit in, like he didn't belong in a world that had left him behind. I wanted to say something that would make it all better, but I didn't have the answers. Instead, I placed my hand on his shoulder and said softly, "You don't have to be perfect, Tyler. You just have to be you." He looked at me, a small tear forming in his eye. He didn't speak, but I could see the weight lifting, just a little. For the first time, He let himself feel something other than pain. I wasn't going to fix him, I knew that, but I could walk with him as he healed. And sometimes, that's all someone really needs. Later that afternoon, I asked him if he wanted to go out. He hesitated at first, but then nodded. We went to the park just to get some fresh air. The world outside seemed so big, so full of possibilities. I could see Tyler watching the other kids playing, his eyes filled with curiosity, but also fear. "You can play, you know," I said, nudging him gently. He looked at me like I had spoken a foreign language. "What?" he asked, confused. "You can play, have fun. You don't have to be alone." His lips parted, and for the first time, I saw a real smile. It wasn't big, but it was there. He walked slowly toward the swings, testing them out carefully. It wasn't much, but it was progress. It was a step toward him being a kid again, a step toward healing. That day, Tyler laughed for the first time in weeks. It wasn't a big laugh, but it was real, and it made my heart swell. I had promised him safety, a place to rest. But now, I was beginning to realize that it wasn't just safety he needed. He needed a chance to feel like a kid again, to feel like he was worthy of love and joy. Chapter 7. Facing the Past. The following week was full of small victories. Tyler started to get up earlier, more eager to start his day. It was like he was beginning to believe that things could get better. But there was still a shadow over him, something he wasn't ready to face. I knew it wasn't enough to just give him food, clothes, and a place to sleep. There was a part of Tyler that still felt broken, a part of him that hadn't healed, and I couldn't fix that with just kindness and a roof over his head. He had to face his past. He had to face the things he was running from, but I wasn't sure if he was ready. One evening after dinner, Tyler and I were sitting in the living room. We didn't talk much, but there was a comfortable silence between us. I could tell he was thinking about something. His eyes were distant again, lost in thought. Finally, I broke the silence. "Tyler," I said softly, "you don't have to tell me everything, but if you want to talk, I'm here." He didn't look at me right away. His fingers fidgeted with the hem of his shirt. I could see the struggle on his face, the battle between wanting to speak and the fear of what would happen if he did. "I don't know how to talk about it," he said quietly. His voice was shaky, as if he wasn't sure whether to trust me with the truth. But I could feel his pain. I could feel the weight of his past pressing down on him. And I knew deep down that he needed to talk. He needed to release the hurt that had been buried for so long. I sat beside him, giving him space, but also making sure he knew I was there. "You don't have to do it all at once," I said gently. "You can take your time, whenever you're ready." Tyler took a deep breath, his chest rising and falling slowly. He looked up at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of fear and hope. It was like he was finally beginning to let go of the walls he had built around himself. And that was the first step. After a long pause, Tyler finally spoke. "I used to live with my mom and dad. Things were okay." I could hear the hesitation in his voice. He was choosing his words carefully, like he was trying to protect himself. "But then My dad lost his job. He started drinking a lot. He got angry all the time. Tyler's voice cracked, and he looked down at his hands. He didn't want to cry, but I could see the tears welling up in his eyes. One night, it got really bad. He hurt my mom. I tried to stop him, but I couldn't. His voice broke as the words came out. It was like he had been carrying this weight alone for so long, and now it was finally spilling out. I ran away that night. I didn't want to stay there anymore. I couldn't. His words hung in the air, heavy with pain and regret. I didn't say anything right away. I just sat there, letting him speak, letting him release the hurt. Finally, after a long silence, I spoke. "I'm so sorry, Tyler." He shook his head, wiping his eyes quickly. "It's okay," he whispered. But I could see that it wasn't okay. It would never be okay. Tyler had been through so much more than any kid should. His past was filled with fear, anger, and loss, and now he was learning to face it, to face the memories that had been haunting him for so long. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't going to be quick, but it was a start, and that was all we could do. Start. Chapter 8. The Road to Forgiveness. The days after Tyler opened up about his past felt heavy, but they also felt like a turning point. It wasn't easy for him to talk about what had happened. The memories were painful, and I could see how much it hurt to even think about them. But with every conversation, every moment of honesty, Tyler began to heal. He wasn't the same boy who had walked into my life all those weeks ago. He was starting to believe that there was more to life than pain, that forgiveness, both for others and for himself, was possible. One afternoon, as we sat in the park, Tyler seemed lost in thought again. I could tell he was struggling with something, but I didn't press him. He had opened up to me once, and I knew he would again when he was ready. After a while, Tyler spoke, his voice soft and unsure. "Do you think I'll ever forgive him?" I knew he was talking about his father. Tyler had been carrying so much anger toward him for so long. It was like a weight that had been sitting on his chest, pushing him down every day. I didn't have the perfect answer. I wasn't sure how forgiveness worked, but I knew one thing. Forgiveness wasn't about excusing the hurt. It wasn't about saying it was okay when it wasn't. Forgiveness was about letting go of the power that pain held over you. "I think forgiveness is something you have to give yourself," I said gently. "It's not for him. It's for you. So you don't carry all that anger around anymore." Tyler looked at me, his eyes filled with uncertainty. "But how do you let go of something that hurts so much?" I thought about it for a moment, then said, "You take it one step at a time. You don't have to forgive him right away. Just start with forgiving yourself for carrying all that pain for so long." Tyler's shoulders relaxed slightly, but I could see that the road ahead still felt uncertain. Forgiveness was a long journey, and it wasn't one he could complete overnight. But every step he took toward healing was a victory. That evening, Tyler and I sat in the kitchen, eating dinner together. It was a simple meal, but it felt meaningful. As we ate, Tyler spoke again, this time with a little more conviction. "I don't want to be angry anymore. I don't want to feel this way all the time. I smiled at him, proud of how far he had come. You don't have to be angry, Tyler. You just have to decide that you're ready to move on. Tyler nodded slowly, like he was finally starting to understand. He didn't have to let his past define him. He didn't have to let the hurt keep him trapped. He could choose a different path, a path where he wasn't weighed down by anger and regret. The next day, Tyler did something I hadn't expected. He took a deep breath, walked outside, and made a phone call. I didn't hear the conversation, but I knew what it was about. Tyler was trying to forgive his father. He was starting to take the first steps toward freeing himself from the anger that had held him captive for so long. It wasn't easy, and it wouldn't happen overnight, but it was a beginning. And beginnings, no matter how small, are always worth something. Chapter 9. New Beginnings. The days after Tyler's phone call with his father were quiet, but something had changed. Tyler didn't talk about it much, but I could see it in his eyes. There was a weight that had lifted, even if just a little. He seemed more at peace, like a part of him was finally healing. It was like the road to forgiveness wasn't as impossible as it had once seemed, but there was still a long way to go. Tyler started spending more time at the local library. He told me he wanted to finish his high school diploma. It was something he had always wanted, but never had the chance to complete. I watched him work hard every day, studying for hours. He would sit at the kitchen table with his book spread out, his focus intense. It was a side of Tyler I hadn't seen before, a side filled with determination and hope. He wasn't just trying to survive anymore. He was starting to live again. One afternoon after school, Tyler came to me with a big smile on his face. "I did it," he said, his voice full of excitement. "I passed the test. I'm finally done with high school." I couldn't help but feel proud of him. It wasn't just about the diploma. It was about the fact that he had fought for something, worked for something, and succeeded. For the first time in a long time, Tyler felt proud of himself. That evening, we celebrated with a small dinner. Tyler wanted to invite a few of his friends, but I insisted we keep it simple. It wasn't about having a big party. It was about recognizing how far he had come. We ate pizza, laughed, and talked about the future. Tyler was no longer a lost, angry boy. He was becoming a young man with dreams, with hope, with the will to create a new future for himself. The next day, Tyler told me he wanted to find a job. He said he was ready to start taking care of himself. I knew it wasn't going to be easy, but it was a step in the right direction. It was proof that he wasn't afraid of facing the world anymore. Tyler was finally looking forward, not backward, and that was the greatest victory of all. Chapter 10. A Step into the Future. Tyler's decision to find a job marked another turning point. It wasn't just about money. It was about independence, about proving to himself that he could stand on his own 2 feet. He spent hours searching for openings online and preparing his resume. I watched him with admiration as he took every step seriously. There was a new confidence in him, a spark that I hadn't seen before. Tyler was starting to believe in himself again. A few days later, Tyler got a call. It was from a local cafe that he had applied to. They wanted him to come in for an interview. I could see the nervousness in his eyes, but there was also a glimmer of excitement. "What if I mess up?" he asked, pacing back and forth. "You won't," I said, trying to reassure him. "Just be yourself. That's all they need to see." Tyler took a deep breath, nodded, and went to the interview. I waited anxiously, hoping that this would be his chance. When Tyler came home that afternoon, he was smiling. "I got the job," he said, his voice full of disbelief. I couldn't help but smile back. I knew how much this meant to him. It was more than just a job. It was a sign that he was moving forward, that he was becoming the person he had always hoped to be. Tyler was taking control of his life. The first day of work was a blur. Tyler was nervous, but he did his best to stay calm and focused. I could tell he was still learning, still finding his way, but he was determined, and that was enough. With each passing day, he grew more comfortable. He made friends at the cafe, and soon the staff became like a second family to him. It was a new beginning, a new chapter in his life. And for the first time in a long time, Tyler wasn't looking over his shoulder. He wasn't trapped by his past. He was moving forward. As the weeks passed, Tyler began to change even more. He became more outgoing, more confident in himself. He started saving money, planning for the future. He told me one day that he was thinking about going to college. The idea shocked me at first, but then I realized it made perfect sense. Tyler had always been smart, always capable. Now he just needed to believe in himself. Tyler's journey had only just begun, but I knew one thing for sure. He was no longer the boy who had walked into my life all those months ago. He was becoming a young man, ready to take on the world, ready to chase his dreams, and nothing was going to stop him now. Chapter 11. Dreams and Challenges. Tyler's life was changing in ways I never expected. The job at the cafe gave him the confidence he had been missing for so long. He was finally starting to see himself in a new light. But as with any new beginning, challenges were waiting for him. Tyler was learning that life wasn't always easy, even when you're on the right path. One evening, after a long shift, Tyler came home looking tired but satisfied. "I've been thinking," he said as he sat down at the kitchen table. I could tell by the look in his eyes that this wasn't just a casual thought. "I want to go to college," he continued, his voice full of determination. I could see the fear in his eyes as he spoke, but I also saw hope. Tyler was ready to take the next step, even if it scared him. But I knew the road to college wouldn't be easy. It was expensive, and Tyler didn't have the money to pay for it. He didn't have any scholarships, and his family couldn't help. It seemed like an impossible dream, but Tyler wasn't one to give up easily. The next few weeks were filled with research. Tyler spent hours looking for scholarships, grants, and ways to make his dream come true. He was determined to find a way. I watched him struggle with the paperwork, the deadlines, the pressure of it all. But through it all, Tyler kept going. His determination was stronger than any obstacle in his way. One day, Tyler came to me with a letter in his hand. His hands were shaking as he opened it. I could tell that he was both nervous and excited. He read the letter aloud. "Congratulations, Tyler. You have been awarded a full scholarship to the local community college. Tyler's eyes filled with tears, and for the first time in a long time, I saw him truly believe in himself. It wasn't just about the scholarship, it was about everything he had worked for. It was about proving to himself that he was capable of achieving his dreams. The next few months were a whirlwind of preparations. Tyler started his classes at the community college, balancing his job at the cafe with his studies. It wasn't easy, but he made it work. He was exhausted by the end of each day, but there was something in him that kept him going. Tyler was no longer just surviving, he was living with purpose. But college wasn't without its challenges. There were nights when Tyler would come home frustrated, unsure if he could keep up with the work. There were moments when he doubted himself, when he felt like giving up. But each time he found a way to push through. He wasn't alone in this journey. I was there to support him, just like he had supported me in the past. One night, after a particularly difficult week, Tyler sat down next to me. "I don't know if I can do this," he said, his voice filled with doubt. I could see the weight of his struggles in his eyes. I knew it wasn't easy, but I also knew that Tyler had come too far to give up now. "You've already come so far," I told him, placing my hand on his shoulder. "You've been through so much, and look at where you are now. You're strong, Tyler. Don't ever forget that." Tyler nodded slowly, taking in my words. I could see the spark of hope return to his eyes. He wasn't done yet. He still had a long road ahead of him, but he was on the right path, and I knew that he would make it. Chapter 12. The Power of Resilience. Tyler's journey through college was not an easy one. There were moments when everything seemed impossible, when the weight of the world felt too heavy on his shoulders. But what amazed me the most was his ability to keep going, even when he didn't feel like it. He was learning that resilience wasn't about never falling, it was about getting up every time you did. One evening, Tyler came home after a long day of classes and work. He looked tired, more exhausted than usual. "I don't know how much longer I can keep doing this," he said, sitting down at the kitchen table. I could see the frustration in his eyes. He had been juggling so many things at once, and it was starting to take its toll. "I'm just so tired," he whispered. I sat down across from him and took a deep breath. I had seen this side of Tyler before, when he felt like the world was against him. But I also knew how strong he was, how far he had come. "Tyler, I know you're tired. I know it's hard. But I also know you can do this. You've come this far for a reason," I told him. He looked at me, unsure, but there was something in his eyes that told me he was still listening. "You've already overcome so much. Don't let one tough moment stop you. This is just another challenge, another step on your journey, and you're strong enough to get through it." Tyler took a deep breath, the weight of my words sinking in. He wasn't alone in this fight. We all have moments of doubt, moments when it feels like the road is too long and too difficult. But those are the moments that define us, that shape who we are. It's in those moments that we find out just how strong we really are. The next day, Tyler woke up with a new sense of determination. He may have been tired, but he wasn't going to let exhaustion win. He had dreams to chase, a future to build, and he wasn't going to give up now. Tyler went to class that day with a renewed sense of purpose. The world may have been difficult, but he was tougher. As the weeks passed, Tyler continued to push through the challenges. There were still hard days, still moments when the weight seemed unbearable. But Tyler had learned something important. He had learned that resilience wasn't about having all the answers or being perfect. It was about trying, even when you didn't feel like it. It was about moving forward, step by step, no matter how small those steps were. One evening, after finishing a difficult assignment, Tyler sat down next to me, his face bright with relief. "I did it," he said, his voice full of pride. "I finished my final project, and I'm done for the semester. I made it." I couldn't help but smile. Tyler had done it. He had pushed through the hardest part, and he was stronger because of it. It wasn't just about the grades or the success. It was about the journey, the lessons he had learned along the way. The following week, Tyler received his grades for the semester. When he opened the envelope, I saw the smile spread across his face. He had passed everything, and even better, he had done better than he expected. Tyler had made it through the first semester of college, and he had done it with resilience and hard work. That night, we celebrated quietly, just the two of us. There was no need for big parties or loud celebrations. This victory was personal, something Tyler had earned on his own. We sat together, reflecting on everything he had achieved. It was a moment of peace, of knowing that all the struggles, all the late nights, and all the doubts had been worth it. Tyler had made it through, and that was all that mattered. Chapter 13. The Test of Strength. Tyler's second semester was different. He had learned so much, but new challenges were waiting. Life seemed to be testing him more than ever. Yet, Tyler was no longer the same person who first walked into that cafe looking for a job. He was stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever before. But no matter how strong you are, life always finds a way to challenge you. One evening, Tyler came home looking more tired than usual. His face showed signs of stress and worry. "I don't know how much longer I can do this," he said, dropping his backpack on the floor. I could hear the exhaustion in his voice. He had been balancing school, work, and trying to stay on top of everything. Tyler had been pushing himself, but now it seemed like he was reaching his limit. "Tyler, what's going on?" I asked, concerned. He sat down, rubbing his eyes, and took a deep breath. "It's just too much. I feel like I'm always running, and I can't keep up. I'm so tired." I sat next to him, thinking for a moment. I knew Tyler's struggles weren't easy, but I also knew how far he had come. "Tyler, you've already made it through so much. You've come this far because you are strong. You're stronger than you think. Sometimes it's okay to take a step back and breathe." Tyler nodded slowly, but I could still see the doubt in his eyes. The weight of everything he was carrying was starting to break him, but I also knew that Tyler had a resilience inside him that couldn't be shaken. He had already proven that. "I'll help you through this, Tyler," I said gently. "Take one step at a time, and remember you don't have to carry all of this alone." For the first time in a long time, Tyler smiled. It wasn't a big smile, but it was enough to remind him that he wasn't alone in this. And with that, something inside of him shifted. Tyler was ready to face the challenges ahead, even if he didn't have all the answers yet. Chapter 14. A New Beginning. The weeks passed, and Tyler found his balance again. He started organizing his time better, focusing on one thing at a time. It wasn't easy, but Tyler was learning how to prioritize his dreams without losing sight of his health. I watched as he grew more confident, more in control of his life. And through it all, he never lost sight of why he was doing this. Tyler wasn't just working for a degree. He was working for his future, for a life he had dreamed of for so long. By the end of the semester, Tyler had completed his courses with success. But this time, it wasn't just about grades. Tyler had learned the true meaning of hard work, perseverance, and strength. He had learned that even in the face of doubt and difficulty, you could still rise. And most importantly, he had learned that he could depend on himself. He didn't need to be perfect. He just needed to keep going, no matter how hard it got. Chapter 15. The Power of Belief. One day, as Tyler sat down to study for his final exams, he looked up at me and said, "I'm doing this. I'm not giving up." There was a new confidence in his voice, a quiet strength that hadn't been there before. "I'm not just doing this for me," he continued. "I'm doing this for all the people who believed in me." Tyler's words hit me harder than I expected. He had come so far, but it wasn't just his success that mattered. It was the person he had become along the way. Tyler was no longer the young man who doubted his worth. He was someone who believed in himself, who knew that he had the power to shape his future. As Tyler's final exams came to an end, we sat together, reflecting on everything he had achieved. "This is just the beginning," Tyler said, a smile on his face. He was right. This was only the beginning of his journey. There would be more challenges, more obstacles, but Tyler was ready for them. He had learned the most important lesson, that success wasn't just about the destination, it was about the journey. Chapter 16. The Future Ahead. Months later, Tyler graduated with his degree. I watched him walk across the stage, his head held high, a proud smile on his face. It was a moment I would never forget. Tyler had made it. But it wasn't just about the degree. It was about the person he had become through all of it. The courage, the resilience, the strength. Tyler had proven that no dream was too big, no challenge was too great. And as he stepped into the future, I knew that this was just the start of his incredible journey. Epilogue. The man he became. Years passed, and Tyler went on to do amazing things. He built a career he loved, one that filled him with purpose. But what made me proudest was the man he had become. Tyler was no longer the boy who walked into that cafe all those years ago. He had transformed into a man who believed in himself and his dreams. He had learned that no matter where you start, it's where you go that matters. And in the end, Tyler knew that success wasn't just about what you achieved, it was about who you became along the way. The end.